Well, that was lovely. Okay. All right, we are live, everybody. We have a full house today here. This is a very exciting one for me. We have the Dexalot team, and we have the entire team. So it's going to be a great conversation. We have a lot to cover, and just to kind of kick things off, a story about Dexalot. So when I first started Avalaunch, however long ago now, there was rumblings of Dexalot. There was this project that was being worked on, and no one would talk about it, and couldn't talk about it. And I was like, that is a project I know. Whenever I find out what that is, I want to work on it. And eventually, flash forward to many months ago, when we meet. I get to find out what's going on and discover this incredibly talented team with these incredible careers, doing really, really important things. And the project did not disappoint. And it's been a real kind of honor to work with you guys so far, and see how we can help and figure out, well, in what ways we can add to what you guys have going on. And I really do think it's going to be an important project, and it's just very, very, very cool for us to work on these kind of things for Avalanche, just personally and professionally. So thanks for that. But yeah, I mean, I just want to get into it. We have a lot of people here, so I want to give everyone a chance to just introduce yourselves. Who you are, what you do with Dexalot, but also your background. I mean, just kind of take some time. Tell us how you got here. So Nihat, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, thanks a lot for a great introduction, Mark.
Mhm.
Well, I'm Nihat Gurman, and I'm one of the co-founders of the project. And I have a very fitting background. I'm a chemical engineer. so, so I'm a chemical engineer by training. So I have a PhD, and I kept it in the academia for a very long time, actually, before I joined the industry. And then I joined the oil and gas industry, actually, of all the things. So I
Mhm.
try to always uh, do something else other than chemical engineering, but apply those skills to other things, either the biological systems or oil and gas, but always related to some sort of programming, mathematical modeling, or technology application. Right? So, and that allowed me to find Linux pretty early on with my graduate studies. And I started getting into programming technology from that angle too. So somehow I wasn't expecting that, but 20 years forward, crypto kind of brings everything together. Actually, my programming background, as well as uh, entrepreneurial spirit, as well as the passion for technology and innovation. Right? So around that time, I reached out to my very long-time friend Cengiz, and we started getting into blockchain and what we can do. So I'll let him do his side of the things a little bit.
Mhm.
Thank you, Nihat. So I'm the other co-founder, and I'm the CTO of the company. I worked in Wall Street for 20 years, about 20 years, building trading systems. And frankly, this could be my fifth trading system. Technically, I have to count. I worked in JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. I even held a role in JP Morgan's statistical arbitrage trading um, group as a quant. I had my own book trading high frequency mean reversion strategies. Um, and then one day around 2018, I was like, okay, I want something different. I completely quit Wall Street. I moved to Florida from New York City,
Mhm.
and I I didn't want to do anything for a year or two. I got into hydrofoil racing and so forth, but even that got after a while it got tiring, and and thankfully I was doing some little projects here and there, still in technology application development, and thankfully Nihat called me and he said, "Hey, do you want to get into something different?" And here we are. After a year and a half later, we are here now.
Mhm.
I'll pass it to Tim.
Thanks, Cengiz. So I'm Tim Shan. I am the COO of Dexalot. So essentially, I'm responsible for the business side of Dexalot, like legal, compliance, general strategy, accounting, HR, stuff like that. Very exciting stuff, but completely necessary though. So I spent 25 years on Wall Street, several people on the team. Last 15 years, I worked in hedge funds. I was last COO of a global macro fund where I was responsible for business operations, front-end trading systems, and portfolio management systems. I was responsible for risk management and regulatory compliance. And personally, I live in New York City with my Turkish wife. So I'm half Turkish to a certain extent. And I grew up in Maryland.
Okay, that's Turkish wife. Right on.
Jonathan.
I assumed you were going to pass it to me, so I just had to unmute. My name is Jonathan Ackerman. I'm the CMO of Dexalot. Before this, I spent 10 years with Red Bull on the brand and culture marketing side, doing everything from the crazy experiences that you know Red Bull for to concerts and artist projects. I also ran a not big but not small music festival, about 50,000 people in the Midwest, and I hold a world record for largest gathering of zombies as a result of that. Still in the Guinness World Book of Records. And so I joined Dexalot about a month ago. I will say that my experience with Red Bull helped me negotiate our first sponsored athlete partnership with Jingiz as a hydrofoil racer. So we are looking for other athletes, but so make sure to submit your applications on our Telegram. And I've loved my time so far here. Really excited about how the community has embraced Dexalot, and the community drives this project so much, and it's awesome to see on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, man. And
Yes.
Firestorm.
Yes. Hello, everybody. This is Firestorm. I'll actually start with the story of how I joined the team. Then I'll talk a little bit about my background. You know, the story is quite funny. I was literally on the beach, somewhere in the Mediterranean, looking at what else is happening on the Avalanche network, and Dexalot went live. You know, it actually got live on the test network. I took a look. I'm one of those people that is somewhat opinionated. I feel like I have a little bit of experience in some of the things that we're doing here at Dexalot, and I felt the sudden urge to send feedback to the team, thinking that, listen, what's the worst that can happen? So I wrote like 2, I believe, long emails, sent it to the team, and thinking that they would hate me. They actually loved it and responded back, right? That spurred a conversation. We actually, ended up chatting over email for a while. Eventually we connected, and boom, I'm here as one of the advisors on the team. So my background, I'm actually a Wall Street operator with a little over a decade experience. My expertise is in equities, FX, and algorithmic trading specifically. So a lot of exchange-related work, a lot of liquidity management-related work. And, as you can imagine, I have been, down the rabbit hole a while ago. In 2018, I was involved with a decentralized exchange project on Ethereum. And, as you can imagine, that was a completely different experience than Dexalot, Ethereum being Ethereum. But, fast forward to now, I've been involved in the Avalanche ecosystem for a little while, and I'm extremely happy to be part of this team with these amazing people. Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having me talk here.
Right on, man. Yeah, that's very cool. I love stories like that, and I say this all the time. And crypto is very unique because you can end up working on a very, very important, impactful project just by being useful, right? Like if you are useful in crypto, you can find a position for yourself or a way to make a difference. It's and the upside on that is relative to just other industries is crazy. And I think people just miss that. There's so much potential here, and you can really work on some very, very interesting things. So let's talk about Dexalot. I don't know who wants to take this, but for everyone listening that doesn't know what Dexalot is, how would you describe it? Why is the time to build it now? What is it trying to solve for?
I actually will jump in this one. The reason is, and hopefully the team will agree with me, I have a little bit more of a sort of outsider's perspective, and I kind of want to talk about why this is extremely important, right?
Sure.
The experience in crypto versus TradFi is quite different. And if you think about the on-ramps, namely existing exchanges, what happens there, right? Your user experience is great, but everything else other than you're pressing a button and getting a trade is not so great, right? So at a very high level, Dexalot is here to solve the trading problem, I call it, in a non-custodial, transparent, and decentralized manner, right? And just to put some examples, and I'll let the team chime in as well. Even the largest centralized exchanges end up at times potentially deciding when you can withdraw your assets, when you can deposit your assets, when you can trade, etc. And having a open source decentralized exchange on the blockchain that cannot be turned off, that never takes custody of your assets, is really the holy grail, in my opinion. Especially thinking about how even TradFi is done over black box style trading. Dexalot is completely turning that around. And at a high level, that's what I believe we're solving right now.
Well, I mean, you want to chime in here, Nihat?
Yeah, a couple of things actually that ties what Firestorm said to the history of our project as well. Originally, when we started, we didn't have Cengiz and I. We were there the first team members, I suppose, and we didn't have a ton of blockchain experience actually. So we had the right type of experience in terms of Wall Street as well as programming technology, or how we should approach the project a bit more coming from corporate and institutional backgrounds. We had some idea about a good idea about those type of aspects, but not necessarily how to tie things into blockchain. And then when we started getting into like different central exchanges and experience how things are done there, quite frankly, I wasn't too impressed. I mean, it was a letdown for me. I mean, it's not like in our decentralized project we solved everything, obviously. I mean, there are a whole bunch of challenges to solve, definitely. But that keeps it interesting, because if we solve those things, actually, I think we can give something better than what people are expecting from their DEXs and even central exchanges. So that was original motivation for us, honestly, to some of the shortcomings we saw, some of the limitations we saw in existing systems, and so looking at the backgrounds, we thought, well, we can create probably a difference in this space.
So why not develop like a better centralized exchange?
Excellent question, actually. I'll give my take, and I'm sure Cengiz has a lot to say on that one too.
Yeah.
So this exchange wasn't our original project idea. Actually, we didn't come to this blockchain space with a project set in our mind. Actually, so we were originally drawn by its potential and what it offers at a philosophical level, actually. Right, so this decentralization and trustless environment kind of sucked us in, at least myself, into the subject. And then I tried, like, how can I be more part of this revolution? And I was 100% sure there was a revolution going on there.
Yeah.
General public doesn't know about it. And then how can I be part of that one? And then that's exactly the time frame when I reached out to Cengiz. And thankfully, he had a little bit more experience in blockchain than me. And then we started talking, and then some project came out of it. Sorry, it was a long way answering these questions.
Why not build a new one, right? Why centralized exchange? Well, we are just doing the same thing over and over like everybody else does. This is not that would be nothing new, nothing exciting. And trust me, I tried like 10 years ago, tried to put my own FX trading system, and I applied to NFA, Natural Futures Association, National Futures Association, and there was some type of barrier to entry. And that also turned me off. But when you go in the blockchain space, literally, we are all equals. We own our data. So as a result, I can be an exchange, I can write an exchange, or you can write some system that stakes whatever. Or so the options are endless. So that's what's fascinating about it. And you don't have to report to anyone. I mean, that's also brings some questions about, okay, we need to have some type of regulation, like self-regulation maybe, that we always was very careful from the start. So there are some other philosophical discussions that we can get in, but I'm not gonna take the conversation over there yet. But so basically, yeah, we wouldn't want to make a new centralized exchange because that wasn't going to give us anything, any satisfaction anyway. Let's say maybe some satisfaction, but nothing. It wasn't going to be new.
Right. Well,
sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was just going to add something, slightly different, and maybe more from my personal perspective. Building a centralized exchange requires a tremendous amount of infrastructure, as Cengiz mentioned. Acts as a barrier of entry, right? If you think about how today's centralized exchanges operate, they have multiple data centers that they deploy their software over. But if you think about a blockchain, your infrastructure comes from the people that are keeping the blockchain alive, right? The validators in the Avalanche ecosystem, or potentially miners elsewhere, right? And that actually allows, innovators to, kind of have one piece of the puzzle in the bag where the infrastructure is provided to you by the platform itself. And that also makes it a lot more interesting because the infrastructure is open and it's supported by a community rather than you having to go and procure it as a black box. That's, one of the important things I want to mention.
Right. Well, it's just interesting to me because, Nihat mentioned that, coming into this, you didn't have previous blockchain crypto experience. And so it's sort of like, I think the leap there is, you make a good point, like the infrastructure is there, but there's more to it than that is like becomes, a big problem as you look at like designing and developing this type of system. So I want to kind of understand like how did you go from, and this is more like, historical context, right? How did you go from the idea to not having blockchain experience to a relationship with Avalanche, a relationship with the foundation, and building something important like, because a lot of this has been happening, prior to, Dexalot coming out, and I just think it's important for people to understand the history.
Yeah. So, like Nihat said, Nihat and I, we go back 30 years. So he called me last year around September, and he mentioned some like, hey, do you want to get into AVAX staking? Like, let's set up a AVAX staking node. I said, okay, let's do it. And then we made a overly unnecessary front end for it, for a staking node. Like, let's just say it that we had a lot of time in our hands. So it was nice. It was a good entry to understanding the blockchain. I had worked with it just a little bit, but not much before. So, and then we started thinking about when we got the bug, we had caught the bug already, so we couldn't get away. We said, okay, what are we going to do next? What should we do next? At that point, I remember very vividly, we said we can do maybe an exchange, but I said I can do everything, but Solidity is going to be a problem. And Nihat was like, yeah, like I'll learn it. I'll take that part. Just to do it, the rest. So that point in time, I was like, okay, let's start. So we started. I mean, I had to get into Solidity myself as well, but him and I, when we were just two of us,
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing for me. I was like, okay, there's something that are completely unknown to me, but the rest I can do. So that's how it started. That's how we did the first code check-in on December 25th, 2020, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
we were working on the Christmas day. I don't know why, Nihat. What was wrong with us?
Not having a life, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think one critical thing was, Mark, really the fact that we've been knowing each other such a long time. Uh, I mean, we can completely trust each other, right? So it's like
Right.
there is that kind of trust uh, that that you can rely on the advice you're getting from the other person. So we agreed on a minimum set of rules, basically. I mean, what are we not going to sacrifice on? Because we are learning a new subject.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we decided, okay, so we are not going to sacrifice anything that might put us or the project into legal trouble. Or we are not going to sacrifice anything related to security, either for us or more importantly, even actually for the community and the users.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the performance. I mean, we are trying to come up with a system that's eventually, uh, hopefully, compete with central exchanges, right? So therefore, uh, we settled on these three guiding principles, if you will. Right? So uh, then the iterations started. Basically, it's for us because we are new to the some of the core subject area. Uh, Having settled on the those guiding principles, we started iterating on the MVP product, basically, right? So, and believe it or not, it took us 3 tries, honestly, to a point we are happy enough to create the test net on Fuji.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we scrapped the first iteration, or I mean, created so much changes on it. It was almost like a brand new project. And then we did yet another third project. But by the third time, I would say we are pretty good
Yeah.
at solidity stuff.
Let me clarify. That's specific to Solidity side because we were not experienced.
You're going to give the
The
price.
rest, there were not that much iterations, but Solidity side, we had to go back many times and make it right. And but our first MVP was with a Solidity code base that worked, that was trading, but it was consuming enormous amount of gas.
Mm-hmm.
Like one order was like, I don't know, 2 million GUI or something like crazy. It wasn't like, so we had to re-architect many times and learning the language and so forth. So
Yeah. Yeah, but what about? I mean, when was the decision to build this on Avalanche? Because when you guys, the time frame you guys are talking about, Avalanche was not an obvious choice, right?
Mhm.
So there was something that drew you here early, and you guys felt like this ecosystem, this technology could support this. And I want to understand like what happened there, because even building a launchpad at that time was sort of like iffy, and this is much more complex. So I want to understand the decision to build here and how you made it so early.
I guess you had to believe in the Avalanche to build an Avalanche, right? That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually, after reading about it, meeting the Avalanche team, meeting so many people that experienced Avalanche at some level, we kept learning that that is to be blockchain, or at least one of the blockchains that has enormous potential in the future. So uh, that was what I looked at. I mean, Nihat, do you have anything else to?
Uh, I think the novel aspects of Avalanche, I guess, intrigued us basically. So we were drawn to the technology, and it was something fresh. And then the also the philosophy and the openness of the community. Somehow it resonated with both of us really. And then uh, I started sending bug reports and feature requests and stuff like that early on. This is like before the mainnet launch.
Yeah.
And somehow we built a connection during that period that eventually created an ear on their side. When we had some project ideas, we were able to discuss with them. Like, we are trying to get into this a bit more seriously. We are thinking about these type of projects. And then it was a discussion with the Avalanche team to settle on this project. And they liked the idea. And it was exciting from their side as well, right? So we need to recognize that too, because there are not many blockchains that you can run something like that
Yeah.
on, and it creates a good showcase for the platform itself.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I want to just so everyone kind of has a sense of where this is going. I want to kind of talk at least as technical as we can get about Dexalot, because there's a lot there, right? And I don't mind kind of getting into the weeds, because why not? And then I want to move on to some other things like the community and a lot, and some of the things that are coming up. But I want to try and get through this, and I want to try and cover like some of the more technical components of the architecture and how you think about these systems coming together. Like how you would explain it to someone, and I wouldn't be scared to kind of go a little deeper into it. So, can you give us a rundown on the technical architecture of Dexalot? I mean, like break apart and describe the core components, whatever you envision those to be, and how they work together to create this new thing.
Okay. So the smart contract, which is the core of the core exchange, is on the blockchain completely. We keep everything on the blockchain. So all the transactions, I'm just repeating if anybody doesn't know this. The order book is in there. We don't take custody of any funds. So everything you do in Dexalot is on blockchain. All right. So there's no level 2 component, nothing like that. Although we have a bunch of extra components that are servicing the front end just to give you that central exchange experience. So technically, from the front end, you can just send an order directly to the blockchain without going through the back end, which you don't. Sorry, that was wrong of me. You can just directly send to the blockchain, and you don't have to go through the back end. But we have the components in the backend that listens. That's what's happening in our contracts. So the breakdown would be smart contracts in the blockchain front end, and then we have, let's call it a writer in the backend that listens everything and pushes them to a relational database. So we can run statistics, or we can do like chart data, create chart data and send it back to the front end, or give the users order history, feed it to the front end, and so forth. All these utilities that doesn't require querying the blockchain, even though everything they also reside in there, we don't query the blockchain again for those purposes. So the writer writes it to the database. At the same time, it massages the data and publishes to a service called Redis, an application called Redis. Redis is an in-memory database. And Redis has a publishing facility, meaning whatever something publishes to the Redis, they get sent to everybody that is listening. It's like a text message, think about it. You send a text to a group, everybody gets the text message, and they do whatever they need to do. So, for example, that writer publishes the order book that it just got from the blockchain. So we have a secondary component, let's call it a reader. The readers, there are a bunch of them, because all the readers, all they do is servicing the front end. So these readers, they receive this text message and they say, how? Okay, I got a new order book. let me push it to the front end. And front end has a WebSocket connection, which is a faster connection than REST API. I mean, I'm getting too much in detail maybe, but so basically it's a push message from the server to the browser, as opposed to browser querying the backend. So that's how we can send the chart data, we can send the order book, we can send the trade history without the user having to click a button to query what's happening. So it's like a listening mode. So I talked about the backend, reader writers, Redis, database. And another thing is technically you can connect to the contracts directly from a piece of code and trade your own algorithms as you wish. And we have plans to publish a code base that will help people to write their own algos. So without needing the front end, you can directly send orders to the contracts and listen to the results and you can do taking, you can do arbitrage strategies, whatever you like. So that's all in the possibilities.
Mm-hmm. And is this something that just like, obviously, complex, but is this something that just couldn't be built until now because the scalability wasn't there? Could you have done this elsewhere at a earlier point in time and it just been insanely expensive? I mean, what is it specifically that makes this architecture like optimal for this moment in time where we're at in scalability?
I guess Avalanche makes it optimal because people tried doing this in Ethereum
Yeah,
and in other chains.
yeah,
And in that sense, at the core of it, Avalanche makes it possible. But all the other core infrastructure, um, to tell you the truth, I would like to say that's optimal design, but the trade-off is the way I like to write my systems. I like to write them quickly and with the whatever is necessary, but having in mind that it is not the optimal design and it has to mature. So I make them uh, flexible enough that they can grow.
yeah,
So the code base, obviously, for all these components they don't, they are nowhere near what they were 6 months ago. We had to expand them. Like, for example, we didn't have a writer and reader. We had one component that everything. So time came and we said, okay, now we have to put them aside and make them separate. So as we grow and as we have more users and we have different needs, we're going to go into more microstructures, microservices. But we didn't start with microservices at the beginning because that would have been overkill. A lot of people or developers get into the problem of over-engineering systems, and they never get out of the door because of this over-engineered things, because there's so much going on you cannot control, and you have to be flexible enough as the needs change. You have to be able to maybe rewrite a piece of code that's completely differently. So from start, you cannot have the best architecture, but you have to keep in mind that you're going to evolve just like a child grows. Your system is going to evolve.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
And is this, do you guys envision this being like a competitor to a centralized exchange? Like, how do you kind of frame this internally? Like, is the idea to put the sexes out of business? I mean, or is it just like we're just in our own lane, we're doing our own thing. This is a different solution entirely. Um, or not? Like, do you think there's a future where these kinds of on-chain order books and exchanges achieve dominance over the DEX? I mean, it's like obviously very far off, or maybe not. Like, are you guys even thinking in those terms?
I'll jump in for this one. The short answer and for the future is yes, right? We do have a vision that is intending to take market share away from the centralized exchanges and eventually grow larger than centralized exchanges, right? However, if you think about the stage where we're at, we are just beginning our journey, if you
Yeah.
will. And Avalanche is also earlier in the earlier in its development stage, right? So
Mhm.
Avalanche C chain, as Cengiz mentioned, provides a tremendous improvement over how centralized central limit order books were done. For example, on Ethereum, right? In Ethereum, if you do a trade on a centralized limit exchange, you have up to 10 minutes of market risk that you have to take. That number for traders is now 1 second or less in Avalanche, right? However, there is still that 1 second that you don't experience in centralized exchanges. With the advent of subnets, we are planning to truly be interchangeable in terms of user experience between Dexalot and decentralized central limit order book versus a centralized exchange. So we would like to get there, but we have a little bit more to go, is the answer here.
Yeah. Okay. And what are what are the legal considerations around this? I think it's like easy to assume, like naively assume that yeah, it's decentralized, it's on chain, there's no considerations, the community owns it, great. I know that's not the case, right? And so to Tim, like as COO, what are the like legal considerations that you're like looking at now? And I think it probably changes, but what are you thinking about kind of day to day around this stuff and making sure that you guys are, I don't want to say compliant, but just doing things in the right way. To Nihat's point earlier about never compromising on legal issues, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean that's a very good question, and I guess taking a step back, just in general, all of us are in it to, in terms of this project, in it to bring a certain amount of institutional feel and way of doing things, right? So we're not here to cut corners. Personally, I feel that having been in or this deep in crypto for several months now, I think that crypto does need to grow up, and we need to stop saying it's the Wild Wild West, right? And hopefully try to bring it back to the Mississippi or at a minimum. But yeah, I mean, from my point of view, having had extensive experience in regulatory compliance, we are currently doing compliance light, I would say, simply because there's lack of regulation, right, and guidance from regulators. That's going to change. Absolutely going to change. I mean, I have my radar on, what's happening in the UK, Europe, certainly anything out of the Fed, the Treasury, SEC. I personally have been in multiple SEC, FINRA examinations and done registrations. So bottom line, look, we have a team of regulatory compliance lawyers, both onshore and offshore, keeping an eye on things. I am closely in touch with the GC at Avalabs as well. And basically, we're trying to do the right things right now in anticipation that there will be regulations down the road. And we're not scared of it. I think we all want to do the right thing. And, whatever we need to do, we will. So it's not a good, answer right now, but simply because we really don't have a lot of guidance. Right.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, some of the biggest crypto companies you can think of in the United States struggle with this in the same way. There's just, no matter how much money you have, there still sometimes isn't a lot of clarity. It's tricky, and I know that governance kind of plays a role in some of this, which we can maybe touch on a little later. But what about the actual Allot token itself? Because this is kind of like there's some of this that there's some carryover. And so you recently introduced the Allot token, and I think are going to be putting out some revised tokenomics. Is that right?
So let me answer that one. I think everybody can contribute to that one. Obviously it's a vast subject, right? So the biggest we work a lot with a lot of advisors from different groups, and one of them is Avalaunch, and we really appreciate the partnership so far. And you have a lot of experience with different projects, and uh, your feedback on our token economics were very, very appreciated, actually. And I'll let you know exactly what I mean. So currently, uh, from the start for the token we had some purpose, right? And this purpose, the primary utility of it is going to be at the subnet stage,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be used as the gas token. And
Mm-hmm.
then, since subnet is our ultimate vision, and we need validators and that need to be incentivized correctly, as well as traders that are incentivized correctly. So we decided to keep a really good chunk of that original token supply, which is 50% of it actually, for operational rewards. And finally, the governance itself is the uh, final utility. So we had these ideas attached to the attached to the token, but until we started talking to Avalanche and a couple of other advisors we are working with, we didn't realize some of the things we selected for the token economics doesn't necessarily uh, support these ideals, right? So then we revised them to ensure there are more supply at the beginning, and we revised a little bit on the price, I believe, as well. So the intention was to get more Allot tokens in circulations distributed to more people to be able to create a community a bigger community that cares about the Allot token, basically, right? So, and what Avalanche and other advisors shared with us were essential. I wouldn't say we got all 100% right or everything covered, but a good portion actually were covered from these advices,
Mm-hmm.
because we are not getting a lot of bad feedback about it from investors and also uh, people who looked at them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it progressed, more or less starting from a design principle and trying to get alignment between the token economics
Right.
towards those design goals.
Right. Well, since part of it is a gas token for a subnet, it's probably a good time to talk about that. And what I think everyone knows, and you guys have never been like cagey about it, that like the ultimate vision is subnet. And this is still an option that is pretty new, like coming together just for Avalanche as a whole. There's a lot of people exploring it. We've looked at it. We know a lot of teams looking at it. It's kind of like the thing, right? And so I want to understand what a subnet looks like for Dexalot. And what I mean by that is, the goal eventually is the optimal design is on a subnet, but we're not on a subnet yet. So, what does that transition look like? Kind of where are the trade-offs near term by not being on a subnet? And just sort of why does this work for a subnet? And honestly, it might be good for someone just to cover like what a subnet is, so we have some context for these answers.
So I'll take the easy part and then pass it on to Cengiz, I think.
Okay, thanks.
So how about that? So the easy part is subnet is essentially a blockchain, independent blockchain running on itself, but connected to the mainnet blockchain. So that's how it's implemented in Avalanche. And it's a very powerful construct because it keeps everything L1 on the blockchain, allows the freedom for the subnet to realize certain goals for the design. Like you can adjust your gas price, for example, for that. You can change the maximum gas limit for a block. Or you can implement a certain KYC requirements for that subnet that may be catered to some institutional client. So all these things are possible with subnet, and still keeps everything at the L1 layer. That's a incredibly powerful scaling mechanism compared to what's out there with other L1s. I mean, everybody's coming up with their own solutions, but from the start, we had our heart on Avalanche, and we thought that subnet is, once implemented properly, it's going to be the real scaling mechanisms for blockchain to cater not millions, but billions of people, basically.
Yeah. And subnet for us is basically trying to recreate Avalanche in a smaller scale from a technology perspective. So what does it mean to us? That means we have to have validators that are validating for our subnet, and they need to be already in the mainnet. We cannot just have validators to ourselves in ourselves. They have to be in the mainnet. And we have to incentivize those validators so that they will take on validating our subnet as well as the mainnet. So that's one. And then we have to have our own nodes that support our subnet. Just like Avalanche does, they have their own nodes. We have to operate them. So that adds to our responsibility of the infrastructure. So it's not just about running our backend infrastructure. It's also running our node infrastructure or subnet infrastructure. So with the subnet, our backend, let's call it, is going to double or triple in the size. The machines and backend infrastructure costs and monitoring, like support people and so forth. And why is it important to us? Because we, like it or not, gas is a big, important measure for our application. And the less it is, the more liquidity will come to our application. And the more market makers will come, the more traders will come, and the spreads are going to be smaller in the order books and so forth. And the additional reasons why is our first phase is going to be just replicating the EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine, in the subnet without any change, and make it work so we can control the gas. The second phase is attacking the speed. We're going to what is called native precompiles. We can actually write certain piece of functions that cost, let's say, 1 million way of gas in a native way. So it will be, and we can assign a gas of, let's say, 50,000. So all of a sudden, an operation of entering an order becomes 20 times cheaper or 30 times cheaper. That's a thing that we have to decide. We haven't decided how much cheaper it's going to be because we have to protect the subnet as well. So the gas has to be there. We cannot completely get rid of it. So yeah, the second phase will be native precompiles. And eventually this is maybe a far-fetched thing, but we're just keeping that as an option as well. We'll see how it goes. And maybe we will have to write, if you want the utmost and like zero gas cost, whatever, like I'm just making it up, then we can have our own custom virtual machine from scratch. But
Mhm.
that is a couple of years down the line, so it's just as maybe like an option that we'll never probably do it anyway. But
Right.
yeah.
So I think just going to subnet is a excellent avenue for scaling, but even that one has different shades of gray, as Cengiz said, right? So we can do the scaling to his actually earlier answer. I'm kind of referring. He said something that works that can scale,
Yeah.
right? But then we have the second version with pre-compiled natives can scale even more, or fully custom VM. That's the ultimate. Do we need that eventually? We don't know, but at least it's an option there, and all these constructs are available within the Avalanche technology roadmap. It's if there is enough need, I'm sure somebody or we will develop that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to me it's quite boundless, actually, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about the governance of this? So, is this something that comes into effect only when there's a subnet, or more near term? You know, how do you anticipate the governance of Dexalot will work and transition into something more community directed?
Right.
Yeah, I'll take that. I think. So, I mean, first and foremost, this project is a community-focused project, I would say. So, a lot of our meetings, a lot of the time, we're thinking of things to do to benefit our users. Okay, so our goal is to transition to a community-based governance as quickly as possible. Now, in reality, can we do that on day one? No, right? Because there are all kinds of legal measures and just practical matters that prevents us from doing that. Okay, so basically on day one, okay, we've set up a Cayman BVI foundation structure. Okay, with directors, and it's basically modeled on what Avalabs did. And on day one, these directors are there to make sure that the community is taken care of, and it's going to be controlled by a multi-sig. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and the multi-sig key holders, there are several. Is comprised of directors of the foundation, the independent strategic partners that's well known in the ecosystem, and the project itself has a one key. So effectively, we're the project members. We're a minority, multi-sig key holder. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what we're hoping to do is that once our token is issued, it's been trading for a little while, it's been stable, our platform is working well, and more importantly, our community or token holders specifically is mature. We're going to transfer the governance to them. Okay. And basically, we are in the process of building out a proxy voting website where token holders can make any sort of proposals. I think the rule right now is anyone with 10% or more of the tokens can make a proposal, and then there'll be a proxy voting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation directors will then take the final vote and make sure that it's promptly executed and done correctly, right? And that's the goal. I think that realistically, we're probably going to try to do that middle of the year or maybe early third quarter, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's
Mark, so
Yeah.
I think some aspect of your question was also how to make that in a subnet environment, right? So that's that's quite a challenge actually, right?
Yeah.
So if you keep the governance on mainnet C chain, but the token is on the subnet, so how do you enable the voting? So I think not all these type of details are worked out. I mean, not by Dexalot, it's I think in general in the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think overall we need a seamless communication between mainnet and subnets to be to enable some of these visions. Basically, I think we will get there in time, but probably not all of them at the same time in just a couple of months, basically. But eventually, when all these pieces fit together, I think uh, the system will be a lot more promising in future functionality.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the system of Dexalot. I'm saying
Yeah.
looking at the entire ecosystem as a one living organism. It is what it is, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanna talk about like Dexalot, the exchange, like the business, right? It's like how you can kind of compare this to a centralized exchange. You think about a centralized exchange, you're thinking about listings and market making and volume and all these things that the entity that owns the exchange sort of influences and controls. And now you have this other type of exchange that is at one point in the future going to be sort of owned and operated, or at least governed by the community. But all of these things still sort of need to happen, right? And so, we won't go too deep into the weeds on this, but I think what I'm curious about, at least in the earliest days, while this thing is still, finding its feet and strengthening, what does the token listing process look like? Like, I'm sure anyone that has a project in the ecosystem or outside the ecosystem is like, how do I want to be listed on Dexalot? When you're interacting with a centralized exchange, it's pretty rough. I don't know if anyone here has experience with that. We've done it, more times than I'd like to count, and it's pretty awful. They can ask for a lot of money. They can be really particular. They can be very opaque about the process, and then you're just in their world, and it's never very fun. So, what does that listing process look like for Dexalot? Will there be kind of minimum requirements? Like, is it open to everyone? Who's making the decision? Just give us a picture of how this works for people that are curious.
Yeah,
So
I think I'll take that one, if okay. So right now, currently, we have two pairs, okay? AVAX UST and AVAX USDC. And keep in mind that we just launched. So the intention is to add, at a minimum, I would say 8 more pairs over the next several months. And those pairs will be probably the top traded pairs in the ecosystem. Okay, but we're going to expand on that. So we're coming out with Dexalot Discovery, which I think Beric will or can shed more light on. But essentially, it's an opportunity for new tokens from new projects to launch on our platform. Okay, so as you mentioned, we're gonna we're partnered with you guys, and we're gonna start listing some of the projects or tokens that you send to us. Okay, but at the same time, I would say that we are very cautious. We're a cautious team, and we're going to be very thoughtful about who to partner with, who to list. And basically, we're going to do a thorough independent due diligence on these new projects. We will do background checks on people. I mean, essentially, we want to protect our users, right? And we don't want to list tokens or projects that are just bad at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
One addition. So I think the fact that we are operating in a gasful environment, right? So it permeates into everything basically, right? So we won't be able to list a couple of hundred pairs that a central exchange is listing right now, for example, right away. Why? Because we have to be more selective. We have less room. But one thing actually we can share with our community, I think whatever our criteria is going to be transparent. That's one of the main things we've been kind of working on. So it's going to be applied uniformly. It's going to be applied in a way we can stand behind it. But it's going to be fewer pairs originally, but maybe that accelerates once we get into the subnet. Just want to add that kind of a color.
Yeah, yeah, it's useful. And what about Dexalot Discovery? You know, we announced an integration and a partnership. You know, Avalaunch is also a pretty careful team. You know, we rarely work and partner with people just because I don't know. It's crypto can be pretty wild. So you know, there really has to be make a lot of sense. There has to be a lot of value. Obviously, a strong team, and this was kind of one that was like a real no-brainer for us. One, because I'm a big fan of you guys, and you know we've worked together pretty close now for a little while. And so obviously we want to support that, but the problem and the solution that followed are both important, right? And I want to talk about sort of what you guys were seeing that brought Dexalot Discovery into the forefront as a priority, because I'm sure 9 months ago this wasn't a priority. Yeah,
So
and
I'm sure Firestorm is
yeah,
trying to avoid this subject altogether, right, Firestorm?
You know, of
He's
course.
trying to.
I'm unmuting and muting myself so often because I need to
When
jump
should I
into
get
this
into
answer.
it, right?
You know, this. Okay, so you know, I would love to take this answer, as you know, my colleagues are joking around. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And, you know, I've been thinking about this for a little while. We know for a fact, because we spoke to him as well, Gün Sirar also has been thinking about this, and he has sort of put his opinions on, you know, why this is important to us as well. And I'll sort of start in the beginning, right? Crypto is still in its infancy, and this is a very adversarial environment, right? You know, people always hear the stories about, oh, this new project, this new token that went to the moon, but not a lot of people talk about what kinds of things happen during the listing of these tokens, what kinds of technical edges that, you know, professional traders may have over the general public, right? And just to touch on that a little bit, you know, the IDOs through Avalaunch work beautifully, right? There is a you know, very sophisticated mechanism in play where it allows everybody to have guaranteed allocations and everybody to get involved in projects that they care about, right? You know, I've experienced this firsthand, and I'm extremely proud of it. And you know, you guys did an amazing job. Once those allocations are done, the listings that happened, you know, over the course of last year, let's say, on AMMs did not go so well. If you actually look at the instant or around the instant when these assets were listed on AMMs, you know, lots of things are happening, right? You know, I'm going to keep it very high level. I'm happy to talk about technical details separately as well, but people who have access to automation, like quick code, as well as potentially large staking nodes on Avalanche, as well as other chains, have a distinct speed advantage because of the way blockchains are designed, right? In simpler words, what that means is if you know when a specific token is going to list, you can write code that's going to make you faster than everybody else. And if you're listing on an AMM, if you're the first person to buy a token, you get the cheapest price, right? So you have these gas wars and bot wars where bots are racing against each other to try and get in the first trade in so that they get the best price. Then you have folks like myself, my friends, the average Avalaunch user who's coming in and trying to get their sort of additional tokens in the secondary market using MetaMask, right? Yeah. And what happens is bots buy the initial pieces. AMMs work with constant product formula generally, meaning, the more somebody buys, the higher the price goes. And by the time the retail orders hit the process, they're buying at a very high price. What ensues next is bots turn around and, of course, sell it back once the price has jumped, and they make a hefty profit. The way I see this is, there are operators out there that are sort of benefiting from the success of these builders, and these builders may not have anything to do with trading. Imagine a gaming project, right? They're building an amazing game, people are excited about them, and then economic value ends up being donated to these technical advantaged folks or institutions or software, whatever you want to call it. So this thing has been, bugging me for a little while. The second aspect is, if you're a game project, like I said, you having to know all the intricacies of microstructure, trading, listings is a difficult ask. Should you, as a gaming developer, focus on your game, or do you need to spend this extra amount of time to learn how trading works? What we're trying to do with Dexalot Discovery is eliminate this advantage of speed. And we want to do it in a way where we use these very transparent on-chain order books where everybody can see it completely transparently. And we do it in a way where we give everybody a good chance to be able to buy or sell their tokens. The second aspect that's very important to Dexalot Discovery is, we kind of want to become the white glove service for projects to list, right? They're doing their capital raise through Avalaunch. They can use Dexalot Discovery to identify their fair price to launch at and list their assets. And, to be clear, we like AMMs as well. We believe AMMs serve a separate purpose as well, like both liquidity and for yield farming. And we are looking to partner with a big AMM name that, obviously I'm not going to name yet because it's not fully official, but to provide a white glove service for people to raise their capital, find their fair price, list on a centralized limited order book, and hopefully also follow it with a proper AMM farm so that, they both have liquidity as well as yield farming opportunities for the community. The idea here is to eliminate unfair advantages and even the playing field.
Yeah. Yeah, we also have a kind of a personal relationship, I would say, with this issue. And I was just kind of sitting here thinking about it now, and it's come up a few times for me as like we've worked through some of this stuff together. When Avalaunch launched on Pangolin back last year, toward the beginning of last year, it was a launch people were excited about, and there was no real option except to just open the pool on Pangolin. The platform itself wasn't ready yet. There was no way to host an IDO. That's what we came here to do. And it was a nightmare. It was a wreck. And as, in looking back, and this is actually something that most projects go through, almost everyone, and it feels like a very, very big deal, and it is detrimental, but it can really stain the early stages of a project. It did for us, and we didn't do anything wrong. We just opened the pool and people were excited about it, right? And then the crypto narrative takes hold of, bots on the project. And, regardless of it, whether these things are true or not, they feel like something that needs to be dealt with. And it's just a really, really crummy way to start a project. And it's just, it's like a function of just what's available at the time. And so when we went through that and we dealt with it for a while, because at that point, we were like a pretty popular, visible project, and there wasn't a lot happening. So people really latched onto this controversy, I think. And we ended up, like changing some things around the tokenomics, like making sure that people were happy, and because once one thing happens, people just start to kind of go on and on and on and dig and dig and dig and dig. And as like a new project and new founders, like this is a position you do not want to find yourself in. And it all started with the launch, just something we had nothing control over, and every other project dealt with. And so when we kind of came through and out of that, it was like, well, maybe it was good that we went through this, because this is why we're here. We're to help people launch. It's a really hard thing to do. And selling a token and distributing it in a way that feels fair and broad and inclusive and that people feel good about, that's a very hard problem. And we spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think we've done like a pretty good job with it. And so now with Dexalot Discovery and these other fair, like price discovery solutions, like this was always the point, to find and work with good teams that were focusing on things that we could never focus on because we don't know how, we're not smart enough, or whatever. We have our own things going on, and so it's like a kind of a beautiful sort of full circle thing for us personally, because we really was like, this is something we always wanted to achieve. Make this from almost like a modular, from beginning to end, collection of resources for teams to launch and build good things, and not worry so much about the launch in the early days and going to market, because like it's such a distraction, and it's such a big business at this point, and it can be really, really hard to navigate, especially if you're not too familiar with crypto. You've never been on a project, and a lot of people aren't. So we're really genuinely excited about it, both just technically and philosophically. It's like just very, very cool, and we're really happy to work with you guys on it. And Jonathan, I want to ask you a few questions, because you haven't had an opportunity to kind of speak yet. And your history at Red Bull, marketing, community building, and these more traditional companies, like how is it? What's your impression been of doing marketing, community building for a crypto project? How does it differ from Red Bull, let's say? I mean, crypto is pretty wild, man. I know it's got to be different. What's your impression of it been so far?
I'd say that it actually reminds me a ton of sort of the music business and the music industry. It's people who are super passionate about projects, who are super invested in, the project is the artist is the project. People really believe in something, and they want to engage with what they believe in as much as possible. I think what I'm really bringing from Red Bull is not afraid to do some weird stuff. That's big. But I think it's that brand stewardship. It's recognizing that our brand is who we are to these people, and
Mhm.
who we are is our brand. um, that's why we focus so much on our community, and that's why we focus so much on engaging our users and the people who are passionate about us. It's making sure that we listen to them, and hopefully they listen to us too.
Yeah. And like one of the things I've always been kind of fascinated about by crypto and crypto community is it demands a lot of teams very early, not just in some token that's trading that kind of represents like, this very, very early stage asset, very volatile, and then people can go trade it. And that introduces a lot of problems. But there's this real time feedback and involvement with your user in a way that just doesn't exist anywhere else. Certainly not like for Red Bull. They have your ear all day, every day. And how do you think about kind of managing that community, making sure that that community is engaged and informed, for someone that's maybe looking at this for themselves? Like, what have you picked up on so far that's useful here?
I think the most useful thing is making sure that we're constantly talking. I think on the main channels for us, that means Telegram, Discord, and Twitter. And so we tailor our message to each of those, but depending on, who you are, one of those is going to be your sort of like your priority, or the channel that you appreciate the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's also just recognizing that we have the ability, because we're a technology product and we have an engaged community, where we can make changes really quickly. I said that it reminded me a lot of the music community, but oftentimes artists and people like that aren't rapidly like iterating on like their projects or rapidly changing what it is that they're doing. And I think that we do that, and we do that like daily. I mean, we had, what is it, 6 meetings today where we're talking through all of the different things that are going on that are community facing, and really making sure that we're hearing what the people are saying and implementing that as we're rolling it out. So we're building the plane as it's flying. I like to say sometimes that it's on fire. Tim says it's not on fire. The plane's just flying right now. But yeah, I think it's that. I super appreciate the like real time feedback that you can get, and people just go nuts. Like, we put out a tweet and people are in it, rocket ships, GMs, like, it is what it is, and it's super fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And what can you tell us about the actual IDO itself?
Well, I can tell you that we are going to announce the actual date of the IDO on Valentine's Day. So in 12 days, we will have the actual date that we will be sharing of our IDO.
Very exciting. Valentine's Day. I'm already like sensing the Dexalot is in the air, tweets and things like that. That's where my
I mean, listen, we're telling people to clear their calendar,
Yeah.
cancel those dates that you had planned. This is really the thing that you should be focusing on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's healthy.
Got to get the priorities straight.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, so we've gone through a lot, and I've already taken a lot of your guys' time here. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes, but I do have some Twitter questions I want to kind of get through. As we're talking, I'm gonna look through the chat and see if anyone came up with anything interesting. Because I think it's a cool opportunity for people to be able to interact with you. I pulled out a couple here. So Karif Sharesh asks, and I hope this is right. I love the testnet, but when it comes to mainnet, Dexalot.com has chosen to keep the minimum limit order at $250. This restriction is prohibitive. Is the team working to bring this down in the future? So, one, is that accurate? I hope it is. Two, are you guys looking to bring that down?
Shall I take that one?
Yeah, James, why not?
So in the mainnet is 150. In the testnet is 250, but in mainnet is 150. We started with $250 and we lowered it to 150.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we would hate to be excluding people. We don't want to do that. That's not why we did this minimum trade amount. Unfortunately, it's a technical gas issue. Now, think about it. Let me explain what varies. Hopefully, it's going to be simple. Let's say that in the order book there are 0.001 AVAX orders, 100 of them. Okay, 0.01 AVAX order. And I want to buy them all from the outside. So what will happen? I have to pay gas, hitting all these 100 orders one at a time as the taker. So person who is entering those orders is going to pay the same amount of gas as a bigger order, doesn't matter. But the taker has to go through them one by one and pay the gas. So that is the reason we had to come up with the minimum trade amount. And we would like to decrease it. We really do. But we also want to keep the order book sanity in check, basically, because then it's going to be crippled order book. Nobody would want to trade and so forth. Hopefully in the subnet, we're going to come with a better solution because we can control, especially like I explained, the native precompiles. We can say that this function of taking an order is just going to pay one gas fee, which is, let's say, $1. I'm just making this up. It's only $1. It doesn't matter how many partials it gets. Problem solved. There is no minimum. Everybody can enter whatever they want. But until then, we have to, unfortunately. And we may be, I don't know, we haven't discussed it with the team. We may be decreasing another tranche to a lower amount, but nothing decided yet.
Okay. Makes sense. Zach, this is also a Twitter question. I think it's interesting because it suggests something I also wanted to ask about, but didn't get the opportunity to. So I'm curious how Dexalot ensures sufficient liquidity in the order department. Will the price be affected by DEXs and sexes? So this brings up the topic of liquidity and market makers and how that works on an on-chain order book. And have at it.
Yes, I can jump in. I think very good question, because central limit order books are capital efficient versus alternatives. But the reason they are capital efficient is market makers, right?
Mm-hmm.
To that effect, this has been, one of the top 3 priorities for us since day one. And we have been engaging and working with professional market makers that we will reveal once all the, we signed some of our agreements, but not all of them. So we will reveal our market making partners over the coming days, weeks. But it's a no-brainer to work with pros, institutional level professionals, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure we have ample and sufficient liquidity. Separately, having multiple market making experienced operators on the team, we do also have a backup fallback plan, as I'd like to call it, and we do have our own market maker. But our plan is to actually transition this to partners that will operate this a lot better than us. But as I've said, we have the capability to populate order books and keep spreads tight ourselves. We just want to focus on the exchange rather than the market making piece, which we believe is a better outcome for the community as well. So that's sort of our plan. And, by the time you see a lot, our plan is to make sure there is, at least one very reputable market maker that is supporting the community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. And Eddie Wynn. So this is like getting a little far out, but I think it's kind of interesting to just sort of poke at. Do you have a plan for derivative trading and support other chains in the future? If yes, what is the point you think this is good for the platform, and when will that happen? So I want to just kind of maybe clarify this question. One, are you guys just focusing on Avalanche now and forever? And two, is there any kind of thinking, however far into the future, doesn't matter, around alternative types of assets outside of like a sort of on-chain kind of spot market?
So I'll start with that one. I think other people will chime in and build on it. Obviously, we are not against other chains. As soon as they come as a subnet to Avalanche, we will be supporting them. So I'm hoping some other big projects, actually blockchains, choose Avalanche to scale their projects properly. Other than that, I think the second part of the project question was.
Yeah, I'll take, if you want the derivative side, different products and so forth. I mean, when it comes to derivatives, because we are a US-based company, we have to deal with a lot of regulatory issues to offer derivatives trading. We are not against it, and if we can put it in a good framework, regulatory-wise, then yes, that may be a good product to offer. But our priority is the subnet so far. And I would like to add one more thing, like around the Dexalot discovery, actually, Mark. One thing that I loved working on this was because not only that we offered something so new to everyone, but also the partnership with you, Avalaunch. Because not everybody can be everything. We don't want to be offering everything ourselves. We rather partner with people who are doing what they do best and leverage each other's strengths and come up with a solution. So in the same pattern, like let's say we want to offer not derivative trading, but leverage trading, for example. Maybe, and it's not just a maybe, but we're already talking about some partners who will do the leverage part themselves, but they'll send the orders to us. So this, we can be much more stronger as a whole and multiple projects working together. That's really the community, and that's really the ecosystem in the working, right? That's the true nature of blockchain in a way. So that's what I love about this, that what we're doing with Dexalot Discovery.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to answer this part of the question. So yeah.
So Cengiz, one thought actually. I mean, it's obviously not a coincidence that we are working together, right? So I was going to say exactly the same thing with different words, but focus on modularity, right? So because it came up earlier in the discussion, and I was thinking probably it's not coincidence that I like Linux or Unix systems which concentrate on smaller utilities and small utilities that do their thing exceptionally well, right? And then you can pipe them together to get a ultimate result. I was planning to connect it to that, but you said it differently, but the idea is the same. Excellent.
Yeah.
I will add just one thing on top of what Cengiz and Nihat said, and it is alpha drop. Enjoy. That's it. I mean, they gave the alpha, not me. I'm just pointing out that they did.
Okay.
Go back and listen to it one more time.
Everybody's like, what did I say?
All right. So we have a couple of questions. I'm just going to kind of go through the chat, and I like these because I can put them up on the screen and it looks cool. Now we have a question from, actually, we have Colin Couchet in the chat. Now you got to watch out for this guy because he can be trouble. But he says, I know you said custom VMs are a ways away, but what experiments with custom VMs have you done so far? So answer that however you like. I think it's an intelligent question. And there's a lot of spam in here. So take that and continue to look.
So, Colin, I appreciate the question. I'll take a step, first one, and then I'll pass it to Cengiz. Always the same kind of mode of operation. The difficult part goes to Cengiz. So we looked at VMs, how we can implement them. And it was, again, our philosophy, iterative process, right? So we looked at the initial VM implementation as well as full custom implementation. So we did some early work on the full custom implementation, and to the point that where we can actually add our own trade pairs to custom VM and get a list of trade pairs listed on the exchange running on that VM, basically, right? So we did some experience on that. The trade-offs there is it's very powerful, but it will take a while to get the whole Dexalot ported to that environment, basically. And we thought in the long run, I think if we need the scalability, at least we know where to go, and this is probably the ultimate version. But in the shorter term, we are looking at a EVM solution on the subnet with some custom configurations, and possibly augmented with what Cengiz said. And I think probably, Cengiz, it's going to be better if you get a little bit more technical color on that.
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much on, but yeah, custom VM will come with a lot of its own problems, even though they're going to be very fast. Like the problems that we can talk about, like would MetaMask work out of the box? No. Yeah. How is it going to be if there is a mainnet, something that changes the mainnet? is there going to be a problem because that mainnet change, we have to go actually have to do that change in ourselves in the subnet as well, right? So there's some maintenance problems. So if we were mainnet and subnet were at the same platform, then whatever is pushed out, it's seamless, like, right? So there are issues. Yeah, there's ultimate gains, like speed on the custom VM, but also security, for example. Like, how do we, what is the notion of auditing the custom VM, right? There is no solidity, like solidity contracts, they're being audited. So there's no practice of auditing the custom VM, right? So these are all these things that kind of raises issues, but again, it is a possibility in the long term.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if it's the right kind of answer he was expecting, but I just saw the feedback. Thank you again for your question, Colin.
He replied, okay, yeah, thanks, Colin. Good question. You do not get the prize. It's not for you. Let's lighten it up a bit here. Okay. The meaning and story of the project names are curious. How do you choose the name Dexalot? Do you have an interesting story? Now, I actually don't know the answer to this, so I'm curious myself.
Yeah, we do have an interesting story. At least
Sure.
I find it interesting.
I have to just say that I found this out very recently.
Okay.
I was in the dark about it, and then it came up because of something we have planned for Barcelona, and the whole story came out. So
So we were looking into Animal Kingdom, basically associate the project with. It's basically, it needs to be resilient, it needs to be cute. I mean, all these, and Cengiz and I we were divers in the university, basically, right? So we are into anything aquatic, and somehow we come across that axolotl, the Mexican walking fish, and it has all the right elements. Basically, it has avalanches, AWACSes, A's, X. It's resilient. It's cute. Whole bunch of like gills outside of the head. It's basically all the elements were there. And then as we were discussing, I think one of my daughters actually suggested, oh, it could be Dexalot. I mean, it sounds like axolotl, but it's Dex also. Dex a lot, and that's somehow it resonated with us, and the team liked as well, so we settled on it.
So there wasn't like a focus group, 100 person in a marketing meeting or anything like that. It was like just us. Like,
well, that's the magic of it.
Pretty organic, actually.
It doesn't have anything to do with like Camelot or like anything like that.
Also, let me just say that on the marketing side, I absolutely love that we have a mascot, and we don't have to deal with the focus groups. And I came in and it was ready to go, and axolotls are super cute, and everybody loves them. So it made me really happy.
Okay. Here, we'll do one more because there's a lot of spam in here. And I'm gonna like kind of rephrase this, but will Dexalot have passive earning mechanisms on their listed tokens such as flexible and lock staking? Now, what I do think is interesting about this question is, when you're looking at a centralized exchange, there's marketing things, staking competition, ways to earn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like you could make the argument that Dexalot might need something like these things to feel relevant and competitive. Who knows, right? But is there anything planned in terms of fee generation, staking, yield farming, any of these things that people are kind of used to in DeFi, right? For Dexalot.
So we have plans for our own token, basically, to give some sort of functionality that will give some sort of benefits on the platform. Like, for example, a little bit break in the fees, for example, would be good. That's something we are looking into. Or getting rewards based on your trades. that is tracked using your or kind of tracked as well as boosted by your token amounts. Those kinds of mechanisms we are looking at, but we are not considering at this point a general purpose staking algorithm for different tokens. And going back to what Cengiz said, basically, we want to focus on our platform, on our technology, and try to do that as good as we can. Honestly, there is so much room to improve on this one. We don't want to tackle other things and lose focus, actually.
But let's say that the community wanted some staking node for a token.
Absolutely.
Well, then we will have to take it in the priorities, right?
Let them stake.
That's the other beauty of it, actually, right? So the governance that Tim mentioned, hopefully in the near future, they will have a say in it, and then it will be.
Yeah.
They will be deciding actually what the project needs to do, right? So that's why there's always room.
If there's a need, we will build it. That's the bottom line.
Okay, you heard it here first. All right, cool. Well, it doesn't look like there's any more. No, don't answer this. I clicked that by accident. Oh, Jesus. Okay, we're good to go. I think that's gonna do it, guys. We're almost going on 2 hours here. I really, really appreciate your time. Well, let's see, an hour and 40. I'm rounding up. But it's been really great, guys. Super, super excited for this. I could definitely sit here and talk about this for longer, but we won't do that. If there's anything you guys want to end with, please do, and we'll wrap it up. But thanks a lot.
I mean, we really appreciate the opportunity. This is our actually first live AMA, and it was a very nice and friendly environment, great community, great questions. So really appreciate the interaction, allowing us to interact with your community and kind of voice our vision as well as our history as well. So much appreciated.
Cool. Yeah, our pleasure, guys.
And then I have one quick thing is, we love to get in to do this. And as you know, we have our testnet battle, which is going to be starting up pretty soon. But I think we're going to do a second one coming up. And, Mark, maybe there's some way that we can let you and your audience get a first crack at that one.
That would be awesome. Well, for anyone that's still here, you heard it here first. Yeah, we would love that. So that sounds like a great idea. So stay tuned to the Avalaunch socials for that. Telegram probably first, and that's all we'll say. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it again, and we will do it again soon.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate
Awesome.
it. Have a
Thank
good
you so
night.
much.
Mark.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.